Elder Paisios of Mount Athos, Spiritual Counsels, Volume 4, Family Life, Part 6, Chapter 2. Yoronda, a mother whose child died 9 years ago, is asking you to pray that she may see her child, even if it is only in her dreams, and thus be consoled. How old was the child? Was he young? This is significant. If the child was young and the mother is in such a condition that she won't be upset should the child appear, then she will see him. The mother is the cause for the child not appearing to her. Yoronda, is it possible that the child, instead of appearing to the mother who is seeking this consolation, may appear to someone else? Of course it is possible. God works things out accordingly. When I hear about some young person's death, I am saddened, but my sorrow is a human sorrow. This is because if we examine things a little more deeply, we will see that as one matures and has more and greater struggles to attend to, one accumulates more and more sins. This is especially true in the case of a secular person who, instead of improving his spiritual condition as he has passed, makes it worse with his worldly concerns, with injustices he may have committed, and so forth. In this sense, it can be a gain for someone to be taken young by God. Yoronda, why does God allow so many young people to die? No one has made an agreement with God as to when he will die. God takes each person at the very best time of his life in a particular manner in order to save his soul. If he sees that someone will improve, God will give him time to live. But if he sees that he'll become worse, God takes him in order to save him. God will bring into his presence some who lead a sinful life, but who have the disposition to do good, even before they have a chance to do this good, only because he knows that they would have done this good as soon as they were given the opportunity. It is as if he were telling them, don't worry yourself, your good disposition has sufficed. Also, God chooses to take someone who is very good because paradise needs more blossoms. Naturally, parents and relatives have a hard time understanding this. You see, a young child dies and Christ takes the child into his embrace as a little angel. Although the parents will cry and grieve, they should be joyful because they cannot know how their child would have been had he grown up. Could that child have been saved? In 1924, when we were leaving Asia Minor on a ship to come to Greece, I was an infant. The ship was filled with refugees, and as my mother had wrapped me in swaddling cloths, one of the sailors accidentally stepped on me. My mother thought I had died and started to cry. One of the other women of our village unravelled the swaddling cloths and saw that nothing had happened to me. Had I died then, I would certainly have gone to paradise. Now that I am a man of many years and have made such an ascetic struggle, I'm not certain that I will go to paradise. The death of a child can help the parents. They should know that from that moment on, they have an ambassador in paradise. When such parents die, their children will appear with angelic wings at the gates of paradise to receive their souls. This is not a small matter. Again, to the little children who have suffered here from illnesses or from some disability, Christ will say, come into paradise and select the best place. And then the children will say to him, it is very beautiful here, beloved Saviour, but we want to have our dear mother with us. And Christ will then listen and in some way save the mother also. Of course, mothers should not go to the other extreme. Some mothers fall into delusion, believing that their dead child has attained sainthood. One mother wanted to give me something from her son's things as a blessing because she believed that he had become a saint. Is it a blessing to be giving away his personal things to people? She asked me. No, I said, it is better if you do not give his things away. Another mother had placed a photograph of her son, who had been killed by the Germans, on the crucifix on Holy Thursday. She kept saying, "My son too died like Christ." The women who were keeping an all-night vigil at the crucifix kept silent because they didn't want to hurt her. What could they say to her? She was deeply wounded. Yeronda, people need so much strength to face an unexpected death. If they have comprehended the more profound meaning of life, they will find the strength to face death because they face death spiritually. So many children are destroyed with those motorbikes. So many young men are killed with the motorcycles. They do wheelies on their motorcycles, making it easier to have an accident and sustain serious head injuries. They think it's a big deal to do a bigger wheelie than the next guy. I was doing a wheelie when I crashed, they say with bravado. Do you see what the devil incites them to do in order to injure their heads? Had they done otherwise, even if they did have some accident, they could have been mildly injured elsewhere and not have been maimed for life. But for God to have allowed the evil of the devil or the carelessness of another, it means that some good can come out of it. Yeronda, why then does our church pray that we may be protected from sudden death? That is another matter. The prayer asks that we not be found unprepared when sudden death strikes. Yeronda, a mother cannot be consoled ever since her son was killed by a car while he was going to work. Try to reason with her in this way. Did the driver hit your son on purpose? No. Did you send your son to work to be killed? No. Then you should say, "Glory be to you, O God," because your son could have become a disagreeable, obnoxious upstart. So God took him at the best time. Now he is secure in heaven. Why do you cry? Do you know that you are tormenting your son by crying? Do you want your son to be tormented, or do you want him to rejoice? See to helping the other children you have who are not close to God. Cry for them. Just yesterday, a tearful mother came to me and said, "God took my precious only child," and she blamed God for this. I told her, if you think about it differently, God has actually honored you. He received the child as an angel in heaven, baptized as he was. He is an angel and you are blaming God. In the future, you will find that he intercedes to God for you. Afterwards, when she spoke with me about her life, she explained that she could have had more children, but when she was younger, she did not want to have children. How many mothers pray and ask for their children to be close to God? They say, "I don't know what you will do, my God. I just want my child to be saved, to be close to you." But if God should see that the child will go astray, that he's going towards destruction and there is no other way to salvation, he may decide to intervene. He allows, for example, a drunk driver to kill the child in a car accident, thus taking him into paradise. If there were a possibility for him to have become better, God would have allowed something to prevent the accident. Then the drunken driver who caused the accident sobers up and becomes aware of the crime he had committed, and he feels remorse for the rest of his life. "I've become a criminal," he cries and constantly beseeches God to forgive him. He too is saved. The mother also pulls herself together under the pain of these difficult circumstances. She thinks of death and prepares herself for the other life, in which case she too is saved. Do you see how God provides for the salvation of souls through the prayers of a mother? But if the mothers do not understand this, they blame God, what God puts up with from us. When someone stops facing things in a worldly manner, he finds himself at ease. For how is it possible for man to be truly consoled if he does not believe in God and in the true life, the eternal life after death? When I was at the Stomion monastery, there was a widow in Konitsa who would go constantly to the cemetery and wail for hours. She upset all the people in the area with her screaming and wailing. She would beat her chest and strike her head on the stone slab of the grave. She took out all of her pain right there. People would take her away, but she kept going back. This went on for years. Her husband had been killed by the Germans, and a few years after his death, their daughter, who had just turned 19, died of a heart attack, leaving the unfortunate mother all alone. By looking at this family's circumstances only from the outside, one could ask, why did God allow such a thing? She also faced the situation in an external way and could not find any consolation. Once, when I went to see what was going on, she started saying to me, "Why did God do this? My husband was killed in the war. I had only one daughter and he took her too." She went on, blaming God. After letting her say everything she wanted to say, I spoke up and said, "Let me tell you something now. I knew your husband. He was a good man. He died in the war for the fatherland, doing his sacred duty. God has not abandoned him. Then God provided for your daughter to be with you for a few years to give you some consolation. But then, perhaps because your daughter would have later gone astray in life, God chose to take her while she was in a good spiritual condition in order to save her." While her husband had been a rather quiet man, this woman was rather worldly. Naturally, I did not tell her she was a worldly woman, but I did ask her, "What are you thinking about at this very minute? Do you love this world?" "No, I don't want to see anything or anyone," she answered. "You see," I told her, "now even the world is dead for you. The pain helps you and you're not interested in anything worldly. This is the way you will all be together again in paradise. To whom else has God given such an honor? Do you see now?" Following that conversation, she stopped going to the cemetery. As soon as she was able to comprehend the more profound meaning of life, she calmed down. Yoronda, I've heard that if someone is murdered, he is redeemed because his sins are transferred to the murderer. A murdered person has extenuating circumstances in some ways. He can say to God, "I would have repented, but he killed me." Therefore, the weight of responsibility falls on the murderer. Some people who aren't very sharp say, if there was a God, he would not have allowed so many crimes to take place. He would have punished the criminals. They don't understand that God allows the criminals to live so that on the day of judgment they will be without an excuse for not having repented, despite the fact that they were given years to do so. On the other hand, God will take care of those who are murdered. We must understand that the human person in reality does not die. Death is simply a transfer from one life to the other. It is a separation for a short time. This is like, for example, when someone goes abroad for a year. His family will miss him and worry about him because he will be away from them for a year. If he should go away for 10 years, they will worry all the more over his absence for 10 years. This is how people should look upon death, as having separated them from their beloved family members. Let's say, for example, that someone dies and his family members are elderly. they can say, after 10 or 15 years, we will be together again. If the family members are younger, they can say, after 50 years, we will be together again. Naturally, one is pained by the death of a relative, but this must be faced in a spiritual way. What does St. Paul say? That you may not grieve as others do who have no hope. How many times would we have seen that relative here on earth? Once a month? Let us consider that in the next life we will see our loved ones constantly. Only when the departed did not lead a good life are we justified in worrying. And if the departed was a difficult and harsh person, then if indeed we love him and desire to meet him in the other life, then we must pray fervently for him.